Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. Today we have a special guest for everyone, Mr. Brian Gerber, who's the CEO of Hemper. But I also want to say it's royalty. This one of the first times, maybe the first time that we have royalty in our show, because he's the king of cones. Isn't that royalty? How'd you get the moniker, King of Cones?
Thanks, Len. I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks.
It has been a long journey, to say the least. I guess I'll start from the beginning.
All right. Well, so let's pause and start from the beginning. I want to know more about you. Let's start with, where did you grow up?
Grew up in Maryland my whole life. Lived in Atlanta for like a year, but came back to Maryland. Went to high school there. Then I went over to George Washington University in DC. And
so how was your childhood? Like, do you have siblings? You grew up like in a suburban area, or like, give me a little bit of color so I can kind of, so we can know you a little bit more.
Yeah. So I actually moved around a lot when I was a kid. I'm product of divorce, so had parents, all over the place, but grew up in Darnestown, Maryland originally, went to like 3 or 4 different elementary schools, finally settled in an area called Gaithersburg, Maryland, which I lived in like this planned community. So it was kind of like a city wrapped around a neighborhood, basically. And so, it went like bankrupt in the 90s, and then it was before its time, and then it rolled into being an awesome type of living style.
Got it.
So that's where I grew up originally.
So siblings or?
Yeah, I have an older brother and an older sister. I'm the youngest of 3. They're 7 and 5 years older than me. So they were too cool to hang out with me. So I was kind of the lonely star.
Yeah, you're the baby of the family, but then you got the attention, and probably like I'm divorced too, and I have just about an 18-year-old daughter, so I can see where you have sort of this family dynamic where the parents are pulling on you and looking at you as sort of their person. Did you experience any of that?
I lived with my mom for many years, and my dad, I moved in with him once I got into the 6th grade when my brother went to college.
Got it.
And so I lived with both parents, different areas. I moved to Atlanta with my dad for a year, and came back to Maryland, lived with my mom. So I've kind of jumped around a lot as a kid.
What was that like your own choice? You wanted to live with dad, or was it like
Yeah, I didn't really get along with my mom when I was younger, and so we just butted heads all the time. And I had a lot of anxiety as a kid, so I really didn't want to go to school. And she was like, "Get out of bed, you worthless kid," and my dad was more like, my dad's an OBGYN, so he was too busy to really care,
Right.
So
my dad used to, so I was the lazy, like do nothing kind of kid. That's what he told me. And I had ADD.
Mm-hmm.
So to go to school, like waking up in the morning was the worst. But one of the reasons why it was the worst, because my mom was allergic to air conditioning, and I grew up in Philly. I live in LA now. So, and I'm making air quotes for those who can't see it, allergic to air conditioning. So whatever, I never heard of such an allergy, but okay. So right. I would have a fan in my window that would blow hot steaming air. And I always had issues falling asleep. So I would like lay there at night and listen to my radio, and I would record songs off the radio and make mixtapes. It was like half the night. And when it's time to wake up in the morning, I slept for 3 hours and I can't wait. So my dad would either physically pull me out of bed, or the best was he pours cold water on me to wake me up.
Oh, goodness.
So that's like...
Yeah, no, my whole thing was I wanted to stay home and play video games all day. And so my dad thought it would be funny if he took the router with him to work. And I guess I was kind of a smart kid. So I lived in this planned community, and there was a Kmart there. So I just left the house one day and bought like a Netgear little wireless
There you
little
go.
plug-in thing. So he thought he was, I was home bored all day, but I was playing video games still.
There you go. See, so there's always a way. And by the way, that's a sign of an entrepreneurial mindset when you're starting to figure things out. Hey, I have this obstacle. What can I do to kind of overcome that? And you figure that out. So moving into what you just started saying, you went to, was it Georgetown that I heard you say?
George Washington.
Oh, sorry. George Washington. And then from there, how did you get into cannabis per se? I know it's not direct cannabis, but I'm just trying to how that all started.
I guess my first time I experimented with cannabis was like the summer going into like 9th grade. And so pretty early on. And I didn't really think too much about it, to be honest. I was like, oh, it tastes weird, got dry mouth. Beyond that, I was just like, doing what the cool kids were doing, I guess.
Yeah.
And so that was like my first forte into it. And then I also have ADD. So once I got to college level, I realized, my dad put me on Adderall when I was in the 10th grade because I just have this visual processing disorder. So I like read things and it just gets jumbled up in my head basically, right? And so the Adderall made me go from like 0 to hero in like 2 seconds. And, it's really intense on the body. So when I got to college, I actually used it as kind of a come down thing to help go to sleep, after being at the library all day or whatever it might be. And so that was kind of how I got back into cannabis. And really, I've always smoked here and there. I took a couple years off during high school, and like I went to community college for a couple of years before GW, and I like used it as a reward almost. Hey, I'm gonna study for this test. If I get an A, I'm gonna go, smoke a blunt, right? And so that's kind of how I started using it smarter. Right. And I think that's what cannabis use is all about, right? Just using it to tailor to, your day-to-day lifestyle, whatever phase you're in.
Yeah, I love that example because I sort of did the same thing. I had a stint in corporate America for a while. I've been in the cannabis space for a long time, but my ex-wife told me you have to get a real job. So I went to work for Price Waterhouse. We had to wear a suit and tie every day. And I know how to do all that stuff. So I would work and I would reward myself with cannabis afterwards. Like put in a full day of work and I'm like, oh man, this is for me. Instead of that, some people pour themselves a drink or a glass of wine. Not really my thing. So yeah.
Right. Likewise. Yeah. So like once I got to GW, it was, I stopped really taking Adderall for like going to class and really just used it as like a study aid. But honestly, after 2-3 day stint at the library, you just need it. It really helps you calm everything down and take off the edge. And so I got, I was always a user. And then once I graduated in 2015, I literally started this business like a week after I graduated college. So I didn't do the corporate America thing. I didn't go to grad school. I majored in accounting and information systems. So I'm techie and I know numbers. And so I figured that gave me a good leg up on how to, at least what a healthy business looked like, Right. And so, I was the kid in the last semester of college building the website on Shopify as opposed to studying for my finals. And so we launched the original business, which was Hemper, in 2015, June 1st. And that kind of catapulted about 6 months in, I'd say. We launched this like guest curated concept where it was kind of like smoke like Snoop Dogg for a month.
Well, let's back up. Let's back up on this. So you launched Hemp, but being an entrepreneur myself, there's a process, right? So you're in college, you're building websites, whatever you're doing, but why Hemper? Like, what was the impetus of why you decided to do that?
So I actually had 2 companies that I started at the same exact time. Like my last year of college that I was trying to get off the ground. And I think as I was just moving through natural progression, one phased itself out and one, rose as the, champion. And that's, I was smoking at the time. And honestly, what was happening was, my buddies would come over we'd all smoke. I'd have like a box of raw rolling papers on my table, and they'd be like, "Hey, can I throw you like $5 for a couple packs?" Right? And I was like, "Sure, why not? You know, I already got it here, right?" And otherwise, I had to walk literally like a 30-minute walk across campus to a convenience store that actually carried something other than zigzag white papers. And that was what started kind of the, marination of this idea of like, wow, it's very limited. Going to a smoke shop is kind of an awkward experience. People yell at you for saying the word bong. You don't even know what language you're speaking by the time you leave there. And that was kind of the factor. I was just smoking a ton of joints and going through these rolling papers, and basically Amazon wouldn't let me put this on subscription because this category is kind of restricted there. And that was what led me to the Hemper concept initially.
Okay. So you were like, okay, where's the gap? The gap is like, I have papers, people want papers. It's a pain in the ass to get papers or other materials to help me.
There was no like online resource really for like, what is the latest greatest stoner gadget, right? And I thought it was such a cool concept to be like the guy curating products for people who use cannabis but don't necessarily know what they really need. And that was kind of the progression, was like, oh, we're curators of these products. People don't even know they need this stuff, and it makes their consumption or ritual better through these products.
Right. So you have the concept, and you kind of said, all right, I'm going to go out and I'm going to see what the market is, because I believe there's market demand for this. What do you do to get started?
So 2015 was like a huge subscription box like economy, roaming around, and like Birchbox had just raised like $90th million, and FabFitFun and Dollar Shave Club just got bought by Gillette. So it was like a lot of talk about subscription economy. And I was just fascinated with, okay, a lot of these cannabis products are replenishables, whether, I started getting really fascinated with like all the different categories, right? So it's like, preparation goods, cleaning gear, odor eliminating, storage, glass, vapor, all different types of categories. And I was like, whoa, like it's kind of endless, and there wasn't really that many companies that were really like developing innovative, unique, kind of like no-brainer products. And that's like kind of how it stemmed. I was literally curating these boxes for myself, right? I was a recent college graduate. I needed cool, fun stuff. If people came over, I wanted to, everyone wants to put someone else onto something, right? And like I said, every stoner knows 15 stoners. And so once people started coming over and I had all these random gadgets, everyone was like, whoa, that's awesome. And it just kind of, I started asking my friends like, hey, would you buy into something like this? Or, hey, would you, does this sound interesting? And, whether they were bullshitting me or not, it was positive thoughts, or feedback.
So you started the company, you launched a website, and then you had to let people know that you exist, right?
Yes.
Some way. How'd you do that?
So built a Shopify website, started going on social media, Instagram initially myself, and just posting. And when I first started, there were actually a couple other subscription boxes already in the space, but it wasn't something that I would buy into. It was a lot of like off-brand products. So like, not Raw, not Zigzag, not, name brands, right? And I was more looking for name brand stuff. And so I was like, you know what? I think I could come up with a more compelling offer. And that's kind of what, born the Hemper box. And how did I get people? Really was just, looking at what was in the market and then just stepping it up a notch, right? Really, I didn't reinvent the wheel. I didn't develop products from the bat. It was really just curating third-party products. And I guess I was just a better curator than what was out there at the present moment. And obviously we're in a restricted space and we can't advertise. And that's
where I was going to ask you, what obstacles did you have to overcome to advertise, anything to do cannabis related?
Right. Well, one, also payment processing. I was naive. I signed up on Shopify, got on Stripe, and started processing. I had, 30 orders my first month. And to get people to know about me more, I started going on the other competitors' social medias and going down their follower list and basically grassroots DMing every single one. Hey, I know you're following the Birchbox or the Burnbox page. Have you checked out Hemper before? Yeah. Right. And literally one by one, by the hundreds, right, and thousands. And it was 24/7 on Instagram when I first started. And so how it really catapulted initially, it was month 6, and we came up with this guest curated concept. So there were other subscription boxes that were advertising through this like WeedTube community on YouTube. And there was this lady, Jane Giroux, who had like 20,000 subscribers, and she was doing Burnbox unboxings. And Burnbox is no longer alive, but she was doing these unboxing videos, and I was like, whoa, like, I wonder if people would buy into her curating a box 1 month. And it became kind of this joke, like, get Jane's box, and people really started buying into it, and we exploded. We went from like 200-300 subscribers to over 1,500 subscribers in a month.
Wow.
So the snowball effect started happening very early on. And it just clicked with people. You know, it was an unconventional way for people to really interact with their, you know, this influencer or their fans. And, you know, it was, like I said, it was originally a Smoke Like Snoop Dogg for a month. You know, you're listening to their music, you're watching their YouTube videos. Now you're sitting on the couch consuming just like they are. And people just really took to this concept. And, you know, it was, you know, they did the unboxings. And so I just started doing this over and over again, cooler collaborations, larger influencers. And that's how I got the marketing going first, was really through this influencer program that I had going on.
I love that, man. It's grassroots, and you're leveraging people that already have a following. So at some point, did it get saturated and then other people started, you know, going after influencers, or was there a sort of a delta in that?
Yeah. So once I got to about the 6-month mark of doing curated boxes, another subscription box company called Daily High Club came out and started literally just replicating exactly what we were doing, like to the T. And while yes, it got annoying, we just started working with larger people that they couldn't get access to. And so we've worked with, you know, musicians and hip hop artists and all different types of walks of life. So
how do you do that? I'm just curious. Do you DM them? Do you go after their management? Do you get, like, what is the approach if I wanted to reach out to Snoop, let's say? And I know that's like the pinnacle of the industry, maybe, or it's one of them. But what would be your approach? And I don't want you to you don't have to give away your trade secrets or anything like that. Just, you know, I'm just a guy, and I want to start a business, and I want to get to one of these celebrities to say, hey, try my product. Maybe you can go out and endorse it if you like it, and we'll rev share or something like that.
Right. So there's not one approach. There's many different ways to get to these people, right? And, you know, how we started was literally just direct messaging them. Hey, you know, directly from the Hemper page. Hey, you know, my name is Brian. I'm the CEO. We'd love to work together. You know, any chance we could schedule a call to, like, you know, explore this further, right? And that was really just super grassroots. I really learned quite early that business is all about relationships and long-term mindset. And if I wasn't the guy going out there and trying to get these people, they would be like, all right, who's this, you know, low-level social media person trying to get me to do a post, right? That's not what it was about. It was more trying to create a relationship with these people, understanding, hey, what do you have going on? And, you know, do you have a tour coming up? Can we do merch for you that might lend into the box? Can we work together on this? And, you know, sometimes we had to go through record labels, which was a nightmare. Sometimes we knew the manager. And so, like I said, it's not just one approach that works. It's really, you know, however you can thread that needle.
But you found that, like, DM through Instagram maybe is better than Twitter or something of that nature. It depends who the artist is.
Yeah, it depends on who they are. I found that nowadays, if I direct message people, no matter how big they are, I'm astonished when they get back to me. You know, people are looking for deals, you know, and, you know, people are checking their, you know, direct messages, and it's not far-fetched for someone to respond back and like, hey, here's my manager's email, or yeah, awesome, like, thanks for reaching out. Because oftentimes, you know, we reach out to people who are smoking and they are intrigued by these products, right? And so it's fun for them, right? First and foremost, before the business starts happening.
Interesting. Yeah, it definitely makes sense. We have our business, the EndoDNA kit, and we try to we've hired companies that would go after influencers, and it never really worked out well because it's not that personal approach. But you're absolutely right about relationships. When you meet somebody and say, "Hey, take a look at this. I'll go over the results with you." There's nothing, you don't have to post anything after going through that, and they like the process themselves, or like now you can say, "Hey, would you share this with your community?" Only if you like it. And I think that's a really good approach to take. I absolutely agree with you. So I read Hemper, but there is also Hara Supply. Am I saying it correctly? So what's the difference between the two? Is it a merger? Tell me how that came about.
So Hemper was the first 3 years. So 2015 to 2018, that was just direct to consumer e-commerce. Got into a lot of product development on that side, kept the box fresh, all that good jazz. And then we started getting an interesting reputation of supplying and being really scrappy at manufacturing product for the packaging companies. So like marijuana packaging, Kush bottles, those kinds of companies. And we were producing glass for them initially out of India. And one of the business partners, my random college roommate at GW, is Indian. And so we kind of played that whole role, and we started the interesting opportunity. Basically, Kush Bottles hit us with, hey, we're trying to uplist on the NASDAQ. We're getting rid of our paraphernalia division, but we have this other opportunity called pre-roll cones. And we have, $7 million outstanding with Futurola. I know you guys are making glass in India. Can you make cones? And I don't know if you know this, but cones are all handmade in the world. And so it's a labor arbitrage.
Got it.
And so this was a much bigger business than obviously glass bongs. Mm-hmm. And so we did some research. RJ went over to India for about a couple months. We came back with some samples, went in for another meeting. They approved the samples, and I walked out with a $500,000 purchase order that day. Wow. And that funded our first facility. And kind of fast forwarding to today, we're now the largest manufacturer in the world for pre-rolled cones. We produce about 90 million of them a month for the market's largest entities.
Wow. That's how you got the Cone King moniker.
Yes. Yes.
So, and that's where Hara Supply is the manufacturer of the actual products, like the cones. And did you say glass too, or?
Correct. Yes.
Got it. Okay, well, that's cool. So then you moved out of the box into the manufacturing space.
So we still have Hemper and the subscription box and all that jazz. We just basically added a new business line, which is now pre-rolled cones and some packaging stuff.
Got it. So what are some of those obstacles? Are you still seeing the same kind of obstacles? But you're mostly dealing with B2B at this point, I'm assuming. Are there still obstacles in getting your stuff out there, or is like now you have these kind of companies like Kush Bottles, et cetera, they just give you purchase order and that's it?
Yeah, so when we first started, so kind of the cone business is super small. So originally it was 2 guys out of Indonesia controlled 90% of the market for about 20 years. Wow. And there were micro sites, kind of like sweatshop, styles in Indonesia and India. And a lot of bad cones were coming out of India. So we actually had a ton of cleanup duty when we first started convincing people, no, we're different. We're GMP certified, we're ISO certified, we're, got all these certifications, we're making cones in clean rooms. It's not what you're used to coming out of India. And I don't know if you've ever tried building something there, getting something manufactured, or dealing with India at all. It's a pain in the ass. They're 20 years behind China. They're not as sophisticated, and they're not as willing to figure things out. So it was a big hurdle starting out. We had to really do a lot of cleanup duty, convincing people, nope, this is different, sampling, whatnot. But when we first went out, Kush was our sales front, basically.
Right.
And so we weren't really selling to anyone other than Kush, and they convinced everyone initially to really come on in and start buying cones from us.
But
And
so
so,
just rewind back. Why cones? Like, where did you? And what you just said is really interesting because 90% was controlled by one company. But in your due diligence, what was the impetus for cones? Like, why did you decide there was a gap in an opportunity?
so I went in for a meeting at Cush Bottles, and I didn't even know why I was there. And that's when they told us they were getting rid of their paraphernalia division. And Nick, who's the owner, they've been trying to acquire us since like 16 months
Yeah,
into it.
Nick's been on the show before. He's a friend, so
Okay. Yeah, love Nick. He's a great guy. We talk all the time. And so he's been a friend, a mentor, buddy, all of the above. And so he's been trying to bring me onto the team for years. And I was like, Nick, I love you. I'm sorry. I have this vision. I got to see it out. And, obviously he respected that and always threw me these different opportunities. And so there was this shortage in the market, and the lead times were like 6+ months. And that's why Nick hit me with the opportunity, was because he's like, dude, I need these cones. I want to go take, Raw and Futural as lunch money, and I need your support to go figure this out on the manufacturing side. So that's how we stumbled upon cones. It was really an opportunity presented to us that we just took and really ran with, not like, we segmented it out. It was like, business plan. It was not part of the plan at all.
That's what I was saying. It seems like it's a little bit of a sidestep, but it makes sense now that but if you're doing a box, a subscription box, and all of a sudden now you're a cone manufacturer, I couldn't put the two and two together. But that makes sense. Are you doing retail on the cones too, or is it just all wholesale?
So we manufacture for a lot of the big tobacco guys that have retail cones. So brands like Zigzag and Raw and OCB. And so they're the ones that are pushing those cones to the retail locations. We do mainly bulk boxes, which we sell to processors, MSOs, and cannabis brands. And then we do customization on the filter tip and stuff for them.
Got it. So back to Hemper and the box, are you still getting celebrity endorsements, and you're still doing that thing with the celebrity box curated?
So for the first 3 years, we really went hard on the celebrity curated boxes. And then we ended up actually moving out to LA for a couple years, 2017 through 2019. And honestly, we just got so tired of dealing with famous people that we phased out collaborations, and we actually started doing more proprietary theme-based stuff. And actually people started taking to that even more than the celebrity curated, because if you don't like Snoop Dogg, you're not going to buy his box, but you could like UFO themed or ducky theme or, whatever it might be. Right. Or, any type, gaming theme. And a lot more people started buying into it because it's something they can relate to more than they can a celebrity.
Yeah, you sort of took the words out of my mouth for my next question. That's what I was going to ask you. What were some of the challenges working with celebrities? Because living in LA, you get this sort of, I'm from Philly and I've been in LA for 12 years. So coming to LA and having these relationships where people actually tell you to your face they're going to do something, and it's like, wait, we just had this discussion. What do you mean? Who am I? You never heard of me, and it didn't happen, and that's not the way it was. So there's a pattern to working within this confines of, it's not really Hollywood, it's just LA. And there seems to be this flakiness that's common here. So I wanted to see, because we ran into, so I used to have dispensaries back in the day, and we were at one point we were the home of Corrupt, Kush, and Method Man's Blackout OG. And it was the same thing. And we're working with these people. And then there's like 10 other people that are associated with these people, and this didn't happen. And it became such a cumbersome thing. So I want to ask you about your experiences, but it seems like you've had similar experiences.
Yeah, so that was definitely a culture shock coming from the East Coast myself. We are East Coast hustle all day, every day. And when I moved to LA, I was like, what is going on here? And it was just a pace below, and not just a pace below, but a lot of you said, flakiness, problems delivering or holding true to their word. And we weren't accustomed to this. Like I said, we're East Coast guys. We do what we say and we say what we do. And it's rare. And I think that is actually why we were really successful in LA, is that we were actually just a breath of fresh air. And we actually were delivering on exactly what we said we were going to deliver on. And dealing with, the record labels, we went over to Warner and Universal and had meetings and everyone. And, you're dealing with the manager and the boyfriend's manager, and then the fourth boyfriend, and then the other manager. And you're like, who am I dealing with? Why can't we just get a social media post up? Like, why is this so difficult, right?
Yeah.
And then through your efforts of trying to just get the deal done, you end up souring the relationship because you come on so strong just to make it a success. And they look at that as like, oh no, they came on too strong. I didn't like that, blah, blah, blah. And it was just like, okay, we can't do this anymore. We're just trying to do good business. We had a contract, we had an agreement, we paid you, you didn't deliver. This is nonsense. We're done, right? And kind of just working with larger people, it didn't get better, it got worse, because they had more red tape and more people that had to chime in on shit. And I mean, we had so many times where the record label would call us 2 weeks before the tour started and be like, hey, can we get merch made? And we'd be like, guys, it's in 2 weeks. What are we talking about here? Nobody really understands how things are manufactured, and how long it truly takes, and what that process looks like. So that was really frustrating, dealing with celebrities and, their managers, and because when you're dealing with real legit celebrities, everyone owns a different part of them, right? So the merch rights are over here, the music rights are over here, they got their own little thing going on themselves, right? And they're all just trying to figure it out, and they have too much deal coming. And what happens is they get shiny object syndrome. So if you're in the middle of working out a deal, or you have a deal already going, and then, they announce this crazy tour or some alcohol company that has a ton of money that wants to work with them, you're kind of shit out of luck because you don't have those resources, right?
Do you think that the celebrity themselves have the power of veto? Like, what I mean is, if they think they just want to do this, they're really, really interested, do they have the power to sort of push back on management and these other things, or is it doesn't really?
I think it depends how big they are. Once they're too big, the record labels take all of those decision-making capabilities away, because otherwise it could just go to shit.
Yeah, I felt the same thing.
They're worried about the image, right, and longevity. And, if they have like some kid-friendly thing over here, they're not going to say yes to some cannabis thing over here, right?
Yeah, 100%. I felt the same way, and you hit the nail on the head about how big the celebrity is. The bigger they are, it seems like the less power they actually have over their own rights and image, etc. Like, I've had conversations with like huge celebrities, like recognizable names, like Snoop type of celebrities. And they love the concept. We hang out, we smoke, we shake hands, we done deal, let's do it. And then the suits get involved, and it's like, well, it'll be 35% and this person here and this, and it gets and if you have a couple of tiers lower recognizable celebrities, it's completely a different experience, where it seems like they still have a little bit more power over their image and their brand.
100%.
So in terms of scalability, are there any issues, like within the US? Are there any issues, since you're still doing the subscription box, shipping or logistics? Like, how do you handle all those kind of challenges?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, dealing with COVID the last couple of years has been kind of a shit show. We've mitigated as much as possible. What we do is we actually manufacture a ton of our own products directly at our own facilities. So we're not really relying on a lot of companies. And I think that's where a lot of people need to really start looking internally is, what can we bring in-house? What can we take control over? And what can we manage ourselves? Because oftentimes you're at the mercy of a manufacturing partner or, a middleman or a trade company, and you don't really know what's going on or what the facility looks like or, what the truth really is. And For us, it's, we have a full design team here in-house. We rapid prototype, we have 3D printers, we got plotters, cutters, lasers, everything. And so throughout the last, 5-7 years, we've really tried not relying on marketing agencies and product development agencies and, people trying to come in and do consultations. It just doesn't work when you're trying to move really fast. And, for us, we're trying to keep control of as much as possible because, we don't want it to just go off the rails, right? And I think when you're a startup world and, you don't have much red tape and you're making decisions like that, you can't rely on people. It's scary because, if things take 2 weeks too long, you could have missed the boat or the opportunity or the window, and you just can't rely.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Agile development across the board. Even when I talk to my team about on the IT and development side, I don't want to see any 5-year plans and what we're going to do. Like, we have to move quick, and it's sort of this Google model of just fail. It's okay to make mistakes. Yes. Let's just fix it and move on. And I'm extremely, I don't have a lot of patience when it comes to partners. And why are we waiting another 2 weeks? Why are we waiting for this? Let's just get it as much in-house as possible. But, that creates its own challenges. And logistics has always been something that, I see as a challenge and an opportunity, I guess, because, first of all, within the U.S., there are certain laws, and different states have their own things where you can do, where you can't do, but also expansion, international expansion. So I wanted to ask you, from a business focus, what is your strategy? Are you looking to expand? Are you in the U.S.? Are you a global company? What are some of your strategies for expansion?
Yeah. So my business, one of the partners, RJ's actually been living in India for the last 3 years, and we actually have 10 operating manufacturing sites there with almost about 4,000 employees sitting in India right now. And I actually haven't been yet. And I know
you have to get to India, man. It's a trip. I've been a couple of times. I used to work for a company for a little while in my corporate days. There's an on-site offshore development company called Cognizant. People will probably know what that company. But going to India, it's such a trip, man. I'll tell you some of the things that I witnessed from a Western mindset. I saw a family of 5 people on a motorcycle, which was interesting. Last time I was in Chennai and in Bangalore, I think too. But basically, the traffic laws. There's oxen carts. They're going down the street with motorcycles and cars going the same direction. There's no sign. I don't know how there's not a gazillion accidents every 2 minutes.
Right.
And but the food. So quick story, and I'm interviewing you, but I'm going to tell my story really quick. So I was told not to eat any of the seafood, any of the fish there. I don't even eat anyway, but I was told don't eat and when I started driving through India, I started seeing bodies of water with sewage pipes. I'm like, you don't have to tell me twice. I'm not eating anything that flows in these bodies of water. I saw it. I'm like, I'm not coming near that. And by the way, this isn't all over India, just the places that I was. I'm sure there's amazing, fish, but whatever. So I was there with a group. And I was my sales group was there and all that stuff. And 2 nights before we had to leave, we went to a Chinese restaurant, a high-end Chinese restaurant. And everybody's ordering, shrimp fried rice, or whatever it was, Chinese with seafood. Not me. I'm eating saffron rice and naan the entire time I'm there. And everybody got sick except for me. So
there you go.
I don't know. That was an experience.
One.
Yeah, but it's a trip, man. I definitely recommend it because it's a completely 180 of what you would expect, in the US or in the West.
Yeah, I was supposed to go actually March 2020, and it got canceled for COVID. And I was all prepped and got everything ready to go, and we were gonna do the Hindu Kush Mountains and do a whole trip there, and But yeah, no, unfortunately it got canceled. We're trying to figure out when we're going back. We've just been so busy.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, logistics wise, I mean, it's kind of funny. RJ and I have, in the last 7 years, we've only worked in the same office for max 2 weeks at a time. And otherwise, it's just been phone calls every day, meetings, and, just honestly having trustworthy partners. When you're doing international business, it's a must, right? They got to be like blood brothers, and that's the problem with a lot of companies that fail trying to expand internationally, is that your partners you're untrustworthy, right? And they're screwing you before they even get to the nut.
Yeah,
right?
it's good to have like a brother who's taking care of you somewhere else where you can trust, because in business,
right?
Or yeah, but like with the movement of the cannabis industry expanding now, firstly Europe, now Thailand, there's other South America, there's all these different things going on. Are you looking to sort of expand your tentacles into those regions as well?
Yes. So we actually have a pretty sizable international business already. So we do, obviously, a lot of the cones we do in glass and accessories is mainly US and Canada right now, but we actually do have a ton of clients in like Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. We just picked up a big distributor. We got a couple stores in Japan actually selling our stuff.
Interesting. So isn't Japan? Yeah, Japan is they frown on cannabis, don't they? Or like what's the?
Well, it's really big in CBD actually, and I think that through that they've actually opened up, and I think we actually have like 3 or 4 stores in Japan that sell our products, and one of them is on like a remote island, just like somewhere out there, and one's on the mainland, and one of my bucket lists is obviously going to Tokyo and just get just seeing the products in the store there would be.
But you're a gamer too, man. Like
right.
Japan and Tokyo. Yeah, I spoke. I remember this is before COVID. I was scheduled to speak in Japan. I was supposed to be. I think I was going to Colombia at that time, so I couldn't make it. So I had to do my whole talk via. It wasn't Zoom then, whatever their portal was, because it's a rare thing. Oh my God, I have to do it, like this, like we're doing now.
Right.
But I regret, man, not going there. But I remember even in that discussion, I think it was like 2018, something like that. Their cannabis laws were really weird, and that they had a scientific community and a medical community that wanted to learn more, but they weren't really pro cannabis at that time.
Yeah, no, it's funny. We get these email, inquiries in from our website, and it's like, hey, we're in Japan, and, we would love to bring in the famous Hemper brand, and so it's like so surreal, like hearing that, like, like that it's being sold over there. And
I love that, man.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And so we actually been focusing on the international market, quite a bit recently, just because things are opening up. South America, we just got into Chile and Uruguay and a few other countries there. But dude, we haven't even scratched the surface, man. There's so much business still out there.
It's so interesting. We're following your footsteps too. So we just got Brazil. We're now financing Chile, and Uruguay the same way. So everywhere. I mean, we have a DNA test, so we don't really sell cannabis, but still, it's all these countries that are trying to get. Maybe it's a new shiny thing for them, but they're looking to get into something new and differentiate themselves.
Yes.
So what are your personal goals? Like, where do you want to achieve in the next couple of years? Where do you see yourself?
Personal goals. I got engaged last year, so probably get married here in the next year or
Mazel
two.
tov. Congratulations.
Thank you. I found a nice Jewish girl, made my mother happy. And so definitely that. I would love to do some more traveling now that things are kind of opening up again. A couple bucket list places. I think personally, I would love to see an exit here, in the next year or two. Just, finding a larger strategic to help us, build out that international market, someone who's got distribution already would be awesome. I think just continuing to build the business, it's obviously very surreal. We're even at this point, we've done over 100 million in lifetime sales, and I'd love to hit 200 million, over the next couple of years. And, I think just yeah, just keep plugging away, man. I mean, I love what I do, and I'm pretty simple. I go to the gyms, try to stay healthy. We deal with a lot of stress as entrepreneurs, and living a clean life is super important.
Well, I was going to ask you, that was my one next question for you, was about uh, sort of how do you decompress? Do you have a mindfulness practice? Is it exercise? Like, I'll give you an example. So one of the things I did was I took a class from Stephen Kotler. I don't know if you know, he runs the Flow Research Collective. So he wrote a bunch of books with Peter Diamandis, but it's about flow. So how can you prime yourself for flow? And flow, the easiest way that I can explain it, it's like when an athlete says, I was on this night, the basket, like a basketball player, the basket was like the size of a swimming pool. I couldn't miss from anywhere. So they're actually measuring that to see that every single neurochemical that you have is firing at its perfect amount, the exact amount that you can. So if you know where that is, you're not working, you're just in flow. Everything is kind of attracting to you, but you can prime yourself for that. So I was trying to find, what can I do to make sure that when I'm either before I'm going on stage or meetings, or if I need to be in that state, what can I do to prime myself? So finding that thing, like I hike or do things of that nature, go to the gym, and good clean eating, as you said, mindfulness practice. So I'm just trying to learn what works for you.
For sure. Yeah. No. So when I first started the business back in 2015, I really started, this like healthy mind, healthy body mindset thing. And I really, really held it to heart and really hold it true to myself and accountable. And, I've been going to the gym for many years, at least 4 or 5 days a week, eating pretty clean. And I knew that was how I was going to have longevity with this startup, right? You get beat up, in this process. It's dark days, a lot of them, right? And you got to stay positive, you got to stay mindful, you got to stay, excited. And for me, going to the gym, eating clean, I recently purchased, actually about 2 years ago, I got an infrared sauna at my house, which is a lifesaver for me. I sit in it anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour a day, and I get the best night's sleeps. I have clarity. It just, makes me feel clean. And that's one big crux that I lean on for just healthy mind and healthy body. What else? I eat a pretty strict diet, more or less. I have a ton of like all the Jewish people allergies. So I got, my mother blessed me with all the bad stuff. So I can't really eat a lot of stuff. So I got to stay, pretty clean on the eating. I can't eat gluten and dairy and a bunch of other shit. And so if I do start eating terrible, I just can't think clear. What else do I do? I just bought a cold plunge for my house, so I'm going to try some cold therapy. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I work out, do my sauna, try to get my 8 hours of sleep every night. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
It'll definitely beat you up. And we have to do your DNA test and see what genetic predispositions you have. There's genes for gluten sensitivity, for lactose, and all that other stuff. Yeah,
and, I'm actually doing I'm going to Mayo Clinic in October to do the executive health program there. And so they're going to do all the genetic markers, all the inflammatory markers, all the blood tests, everything. I haven't had a checkup in years. And so I figured, might as well get the Rolls Royce of checkups.
Yeah, so as well. It makes total sense. So, entrepreneurship has its own challenges. You get beat up, but associated with the cannabis space, it's even worse. And I'll tell you, it was easier when we had dispensaries. Like, it was less intense than having, I don't know, cannabis adjacent sort of thing. I mean, we're not in the cannabis space, but we're picks and shovels, just like, in a way, just like you. But the obstacles, like you mentioned, was a Square, whatever, Stripe, I think.
Payment processing.
I mean, every little thing is payment processing. So you're in high risk. Insurance, you're in high risk. And I had a thing recently with banking. So not only corporate banking, which was a pain, my personal banking. So because I had a bunch of checks that needed to clear, and I was traveling. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stop by my corporate bank instead of getting a check that's going to take 3 days to clear. I'm going to take out cash, which is 5 minutes away from my personal bank. Go in there, deposit cash, and clear all my checks so I can my bills, whatever that were coming due. And I did it twice, 2 months in a row. I took out my salary in cash, and and paid. So I get a call from the bank manager. Where is this money coming from? I said, well, here's my receipt. It's from, I don't want to mention the bank. Maybe I'll mention it. It's coming from my Citibank account, which is my corporate account. And I'm depositing my First Republic personal bank. It was deposited literally within 15 minutes of me withdrawing. And there's all these checks going through that. So the third month, they said, we would like you to do a bank check instead. The next month, I get a letter from First Republic Bank that they're canceling my account. They're closing my account. It's like, for what? Well, cash. And we did due diligence, and you're associated with a cannabis business in some way. I mean, I was there for 11 years. I didn't hide what we do for our business. So it's these kind of things that I don't think people realize the hoops that we have to jump to be in this industry. Green Rush.
I had we had just hit 50,000 processing a month on Stripe, and I get an email saying, who are you guys? What's going on here? And we see you're selling paraphernalia. We're shutting you down. And I wrote them back, and I pleaded and pleaded and pleaded with them to give me 30 days to find a replacement. And nowadays they don't give a fuck. They'll just shut you off. They don't care. But I guess it was right around when, people were, the whole payment processing massacre is what I call it. And, so they gave us 30 days, then we moved over to like CardWorks, then AVPS, then another one, got shut off that, moved over. And so I thought we were done numerous times. Yeah. And my partners are looking at me like, Brian, if we don't find a replacement, if we can't process payments, we're done. Right. Yeah. And so people don't understand how, crazy the processing world is, even till this day. If your chargeback ratio goes above 1%, they're knocking you off because it's all these risk managers behind these screens that are just making these calls in a very linear way. And, it's kind of like bing, bing, okay, bye. Right.
Yeah. It's actual scientists, and it's all risk analysis. And you're absolutely right. And I remember the first time we got shut off, when we first started, we were using PayPal, I want to say. Not only did they shut us down, but all the money they kept.
They held. Yep. Likewise.
And for a while.
They kept I think for us, it was 180 grand for almost 14 months.
Yeah, it was like 2 years. Exactly. It was like 2 years. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And because of the chargeback window, right? And so, it was insane. We showed up at their offices. We're like, guys, we're a small business. We can't, we'll cover, hold 50K, release the rest, something, right? Yeah. No, they won't play ball with you, right? They don't care. And, you could plead and whine and, fuss and whatever, but they don't care. So the payment processing thing is nuts. And, even for CBD and Delta 8 and all that type of shit, it's even crazier.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. All right. So I have some questions that I ask all my guests. You kind of sort of answered the first one, but I'll ask it again so we can get a little more color around it. So please describe your first experience with cannabis.
My first experience with cannabis was my buddy Will Hunter. We were behind the middle school that they just built in my neighborhood. And I think it was during the summer, and we were sitting on the stoops behind the school, and he rolled up a joint in a zigzag white rolling paper, and I took a couple hits, and he was like, try this, man. And I was like, all right, fine, and that was my first experience. I got, I would say, stoned, and we started driving around, and just had the windows down and the breeze hitting my face, and I was like, this is kind of cool. you know?
So a good experience.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Cool. So I'm a big music guy. Just curious, do you remember the first concert that you ever went to?
First concert I ever went to. Yes, my mother took me and my siblings and some of my sister's friends, and I think we went to it was either a Backstreet Boys concert or an NSYNC concert.
Yeah.
And I was like maybe like, 8, 9, 10, 11 at the time. And yeah, that was my first concert.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Just kidding. All right. What was the last? Do you remember what was the last concert you went to?
The last concert. I don't go to many concerts, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Maybe it was Backstreet Boys again because they're back.
Actually, I went to I think I went to go see Drake actually at the Verizon Center. I think I did.
Yeah, very cool. What about an album? Do you remember what the first album you purchased was?
First album I purchased. It had to have been some rock stuff, maybe like, I don't know, like Linkin Park, Three Doors Down, something like that. I can't remember what was it, Sam Goody's? Sam Goody? Yeah, I mean, who goes to the malls anymore? But that's the CD stores. You'd hang out there and just listen to the music all day.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work at Tower Records way back in the day.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my job through college. Are you listening to anything today that you think is cool that you want to share?
Honestly, I got my playlists on, Apple Music, and I nowadays I like, like mashups and, kind of like dance, not like EDM, but like, just like I listen to it when I'm at the gym, and, it hypes me up and, gets me
So
going.
I went to see, maybe this is something of an example, Girl Talk recently. Are you familiar with Girl Talk?
Sounds familiar.
Mashup DJ that does all this kind of thing. So anyway, if you want to check out Girl Talk, he was pretty interesting. DJ mashes up like rock and hip hop and dance music. And it's kind of electronic, but it has all these different elements.
Right.
Okay.
That's cool.
What has cannabis meant in your life?
A lot. It has obviously been a resource, first and foremost, especially, for me, my biggest problem is just falling asleep, shutting off my brain at night, getting that clarity and just toning things down to, to the point where it's like, okay, the lights aren't going to shut off tomorrow. It's okay. We can go to sleep. Let's just calm down, and just kind of helps me shut off my brain. And also it helps with a ton of I have all the stomach issues. And so it helps me with, calming my stomach down, and all the stuff, the anxiety, revs up, and I mean, it's led me to my business partners who are now my brothers, and, my friends. And, I couldn't have imagined, that this plant would have brought them all to me, in this mysterious way. And, I think the industry as a whole is awesome. And I think it's super supportive. And, I think we're all just trying to, kind of pioneer our own lane. And I think it's super special that we're all connected by the plant, and, that it doesn't discriminate. And, I think that's what it means to me.
Yeah, it's great. I'd love to talk more about the gut health kind of issues, because we just finished a study at CU Boulder about anxiety and pain, and there's a correlation between certain genotypes and how they express themselves with additional cortisol secretion. And if you have predisposition to gut health issues like IBD, it triggers the expression of some of those. So there's really a lot of correlations between the two. But we'll save it for another show. But I can definitely talk to you about that offline. All right. So bonus question: please describe what your room looked like growing up. And I know you
room
sort of
with-
traveled, and I know you went between houses, so you can pick and choose whichever one you want to describe that's more descriptive.
Okay, so I guess I'll start when I was a kid. I was a pain in the ass, so I didn't want to sit in the crib, and I would climb out every single night. And so I forced my parents to get me this like big race car bed when I was little. And I had, what was it? Was it trains all over my room? I love trains. My dad had this we lived in this big mansion growing up, and in the basement we had this one room where the Lionel trains and the gas powered ones, and he built this massive city. And yeah, so it was like trains and cars and stuff like that.
Cool. And then when you got older, like teenage, did you have a room with posters on the wall or anything like that? Or
Did I have posters? Not really. Honestly, I was always outside. Whenever I could leave the house, from the moment I got home from school, I'd leave and go hang out with my friends. And, I guess you can't do this anymore, but when it's got dark, you come home,
I was a latchkey kid too, so I know exactly what you mean. Like we get home, I'm all by myself, I get on my bike and I ride and see my
Yep.
friends and we play whatever until the street light came on. It's time to go home to dinner.
Yeah. I had a lot of memorabilia. I played ice hockey growing up.
Okay,
And
cool.
so, yeah, I played all sports actually. So I had like baseball memorabilia, hockey memorabilia, basketball, and my dad, because he was a doctor, all the drug reps would take us to the games.
Yeah.
When they didn't cut all that off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I hear you. I hear you.
but
That's cool.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So who's your hockey team?
I guess coming from Maryland, it's the Washington Caps, and it was sucked because the first year that I moved out of DC, I lived in DC for like 11 years, and the first year I moved out of DC, they won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, Ovechkin. I remember that.
Yeah.
I'm a Flyers fan, so it's
Cool.
yeah, it's cool, but we haven't won since '75, I think. So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
painful.
I went to Philly once actually. I did the Big Ben tour, and did the cheesesteaks and the
Yeah, you did. It's the Liberty Bell,
Liberty.
Constitution, Declaration of Independence,
Yeah.
and then the Art Museum Rocky Steps, where you have to run like Rocky and see the Rocky statue and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That was when I was really young. I was 14 maybe.
Brian, where can people find out more about your businesses? Where can they contact you if they want to get in touch?
Yeah. So Hemper is hemper.com, HEMPER, and Horror Supply is HARA supply.com. And my personal email is brian@hemper.co.
Got it. I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being on. This was great, and hopefully we'll connect soon.
Thanks, Len. I appreciate you having me on.